Mr. Chairman, I believe the bill before us today is a bad idea for millions of Americans, particularly those in the middle class. The legislation, which was crafted solely by the majority party behind closed doors and which was not made public until late last week, puts the well-connected first while forcing millions of American families to watch as their taxes will go up. That's not what the American people asked us to do, and it's not something that we intend as Democrats to support. In 2001, Republicans offered a tax cut of $1.3 trillion. In 2003, Republicans offered a tax cut of an additional $1 trillion. And in 2005, they offered a repatriation tax holiday. Each time, they promised job growth. However, they took us to the casino each time without a win. So why do we think that we'll have a win with this proposal? Their offering today is based upon the following premise. Maybe there will be 3% growth. Maybe there will be 3.5% growth. Maybe there will be more investment. But we can also say, based on the three examples I've just cited, maybe not. We have 1 million new veterans we need to care for, and our military is committed around the world, and we can't afford another gamble. Since my first day as ranking member, I've called upon our colleagues here to work together on real reform for real people. I agree with my Republican colleagues that our tax system is far too complicated, contains far too many loopholes, and holds back American businesses from competing in the global economy. However, I do not agree that in enacting tax reform we should be giving more benefits to the well-off and the well-connected with the hope that it might trickle down. There is not a single mainstream, respected economist in this country that will argue that tax cuts pay for themselves. History has proven it does not work. The last time the House worked on a successful tax reform measure, as cited, the process was indeed quite different. The tax reform bill in 1986 was written in a bipartisan manner from start to finish. It unfolded over years, starting in '82, with countless opportunities to examine the legislation and to make substantial changes. That included 30 hearings on the bill and testimony from 450 witnesses. The markup alone lasted for 26 days. This is a missed opportunity. I truly believe that instead of the closed process that the Republicans used in developing this legislation, if we instead worked together on a bipartisan basis, which included an open debate, we would have and could have developed a bill that was better for our economy, American business, and indeed middle-class families. There are things that everyone on this dais can agree on. President Obama noted and offered a change in the corporate rate along with Secretary Lew. This could be negotiated, and we're missing that opportunity. We need a tax code that is far less complex, and we need a tax system that encourages innovation and growth. That, Mr. Chairman, should have been the starting point for good faith bipartisan negotiations. The middle class in America, they're struggling. For years, they've watched as their wages would stagnate and their hours were cut, and it was my hope in passing tax reform that we might take those Americans who feel forgotten and left behind into consideration and build a tax code founded on fairness. This legislation does not do that. The legislation we are marking up today lets the American people down at every step of their lives, from birth through retirement. It fails to provide the needed improvements to the tax code that could assist a hopeful young family in trying to keep their head above water, the student trying to do the right thing by getting an education, the factory worker at the end of a long career just hoping to have enough dignity in which to retire. We believe that instead of pulling down the ladder of opportunity for those in the middle class and the millions who aspire to it, we should be expanding that opportunity to make sure everyone has a fair shot. The legislation is flawed. It will hurt the teacher who spends his own money to buy school supplies for their students, the young parents who want to know the joy of adopting a child, students trying to responsibly pay back their student loans, the wife trying to afford her husband's Alzheimer's care, and the janitor who wants to retire with dignity so he can spoil his or her grandchildren. And let me remind my colleagues the consideration that we have today also just a week ago was going to go after America's retirement savings plans to offset the tax cuts they propose. And eventually I'll remind all that if this doesn't work, we'll be back to those very issues and include Medicare and Social Security as well. I worry that this impact will have a huge influence on our housing market. It scales back the tax benefit of buying a new home. It will inevitably lead to lower home values. It eliminates the new markets tax credit, advanced funding, and private activity bonds, which, by the way, are issues I have championed during my career. That's why groups like the National Association of Home Builders oppose this legislation. Mr. Chairman, we can no longer accept the status quo. I hope that we'll have an opportunity to make America get rich and richer and create more wealth and more opportunity for all. We cannot afford to only care about deficits when there's a Democratic president, including Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. I hope at this time, Mr. Chairman, that we can set aside this bill and start again in a bipartisan manner for a new approach to tax reform that provides real reform to real people and gets the economy growing again. Thank you.